And it starts from caring enough to know somebody's name. And I think we got a lot of people trying to do justice that don't know the names of the people they're trying to either advocate for or advocate against. And I think that's one thing that we can bring. If faith is a big deal for you and you're listening, do this because this is what Jesus talks about. If faith isn't a big deal for you, if you're none of the above, do the same thing. Just take a genuine interest in people for no other reason. There's nothing on the other side of the equal sign, no agenda, because when love has an agenda, it ain't love anymore. It's just another program, and we don't need more programs.
You're listening to Justice Matters with Tim Buxton, a podcast inspiring the fight for a world where everyone belongs. Hey there guys, welcome to the Justice Matters podcast. Look, I just got off the call with today's guest and I'm super excited. It is Bob Goff. He's a New York Times best-selling author of Love Does, Everybody Always, and now Dream Big. And we had a bit of a party because he found out that his book had just become number 3 on the New York Times bestsellers list. We got out the party poppers, we got some red balloons here, and we celebrated. But guys, this guy is truly incredible. He's also the Ugandan consul to the United States. How's that for an achievement? That's because he was he's a retired lawyer. Yeah, in fact, he gave up his firm. He handed over to a young guy and said, "Here's the keys." Walked away and said, "You don't owe me anything." Why? Because he wanted to start a nonprofit called Love Does. And that's kind of how we met. He was traveling around and wanted to visit us in Iraq. I was living in Iraq with my family, helping refugees. And he wanted to come along and check out what we were doing. In fact, they came along and supported us as we were helping to educate children that had fled from ISIS. And he's gone on to build schools in other war-torn countries around the world, including Afghanistan, in Nepal, Somalia. I mean, these are crazy places, guys. And he really has been on the forefront of using his life to make a profound difference and impact in the lives of those less fortunate, especially in some of the most dangerous and war-torn countries around the world. Over the years, I've got to know Bob, also as a close friend. He's a guy I've been able to call up at some really low times and also to celebrate with. And that's the unique thing about him. Guys, not many New York Times bestselling authors will put their cell phone number in the back of their book. And that's what he does. He's put it in there, and you can call him. He's made himself available. We talk about a lot of these things, these core values and passions in our lives that make us who we are, that make us want to make a difference in this world. Every time I get off the phone with him, I leave inspired to make a difference. And that's what this podcast is about, how we can inspire people through conversations with people that are out there doing it to make a difference in this world, a world where everyone belongs. There's nobody else I'd really want to have as a part of my guest to launch this podcast out into the world. It's a dream that I've had for a couple of years now, and he's been one of my biggest cheerleaders. This conversation is pretty incredible. It's so much fun. We talk about a stack of things. You're going to love it, and I can't wait to share Bob with you today. All right. Well, hey, Bob, it is so good to be able to chat with you. This is my brand new podcast that I'm launching, and you're going to be one of my first guests, and I'm so very excited.
Congratulations. Boy, a lot of people are going to get touched, and I know you've been such a big influence in my life. I'm just so glad that more people get a little dose of Tim.
Oh, man, Bob, thank you. Today we're going to have a party, because I jumped on the New York Times bestseller because you have just launched your 3rd book. Well, it's really your 4th book, right? But
yes,
you've just launched
right. I did lose one along the way there, yeah.
But you've launched your 3rd book, and I found out that it's going to be, what, number 3 on the New York Times bestsellers list. So I got myself some party poppers here.
Yeah, baby, come on. I got
the only copy that's in Australia. Don't tell anyone. It's actually a photocopy of another one of your books, but I've read it, most of it at least, on Audible. As soon as it got out. But I think we need to pop this bad boy and celebrate.
Yeah, come on.
Yeah. But
You'll be cleaning that up for a while.
oh, that and the rest of the duct tape that's holding everything up in this set here. But it's I'm just so thankful that you would come on. I know you've probably been jumping on podcast after podcast, and you've got lots of engagements with your book.
Actually, I don't, because I'm not, peddling books. I just talking to a couple friends, and that's just good enough. And so, I don't do actually that very, very many, because I would rather just talk to a couple friends than talk to everybody.
Oh man!
So I'm just so glad to be talking to you.
Well, I know getting on top of the New York Times bestsellers books is not necessarily your greatest ambitions. However, getting this message out to people, to dream big, to live their life with unhindered by any of the fear or anything that's held them back, is what's important to you. And I don't think there's anybody at this moment in time that we have where there's people that are experiencing a lot of setbacks. There's a lot of uncertainty in the world, and your voice, it's been a trusted voice in my life. I've called you up several times when I've been at those defining moments of life. I've shed a few tears with you, and to hear your voice on the other end, pushing me forward, encouraging me, those little bits of advice along the way have helped. And I'm just glad that I get the opportunity to share you in this platform with my audience, and we're going to hopefully talk a bit about some of the areas, especially for me, that I'm passionate about, is areas of justice, areas of fighting for the oppressed. And when I think about your journey, as you've talked about, I love the way you've referred to yourself as a recovering lawyer, and you have used that in incredible ways to fight for the oppressed around the world. For those that maybe haven't read your book or just learning a bit about who you are, could you talk a bit about your story coming from being a lawyer to fighting against witch doctors, and then opening a school for witch doctors?
Isn't that crazy? Yeah. So just briefly, I was practiced law for 32 years, and I decided to go straight. Just not be that guy. Really what happened is, like, a little by little, we started doing some stuff overseas. I saw God doesn't seem to be very fond of lawyers, but he's nuts about kids. And so what I started to do is spending more and more time in Uganda, then India. I wrote a book, and I don't know how to make cupcakes, so I wrote a book and we gave all the money away, but they sold a couple of them. And we then started schools in Mogadishu and Iraq, where you were, and I think there may be like 8 countries. The newest ones have been in Afghanistan, where we're teaching little girls that the Taliban say can't learn how to read and write. We're teaching them how to read and write, in your face. And then cool. We've are building right now. The walls are going up in the Virunga jungle in Congo.
Come on,
so there's a bunch. It's so fun. So all of this just took me away from the office more and more from my day job as a lawyer, until I live in San Diego, and my office was in Seattle, Washington, which is 1,900 miles away each direction.
Oh, okay.
And
that sounds normal.
So I fly up each morning there, and then I would fly home for supper, and I did that for a quarter of a century.
No
so
way.
There was one day, though, that I walked into the office, and there was a new gal there, and I'd spent a lot of time up in Seattle, but just hadn't swung by the office. I'd be in court, or I'd be here or there. And she stopped and she said, "Who are you here to see?" I'm like, "Oh, actually, that's my name behind you. Like, it's mine." And I realized it had been a larger part of a year that I hadn't even been in my own office. I didn't even know the people who work for me. So I got everybody together in the biggest conference room we had, and I quit. I said, "I'm out." It was one of
No.
those stories. Cortez, when he discovered America, he said he burned the ships.
Oh
So
my.
I was Cortez, and it was 1642,
No
and I
way
was
looking
like,
back.
no way. So I took the key off my ring. I
Mhm.
gave it to a guy who'd been working for me for a decade. I said, "It's all yours. You don't owe me anything."
Oh
Now,
man.
that's a stupid economic decision, but it's
Right.
an awesome new creation decision. And
Mhm.
my premise is this: we have got to burn down what's old
Yeah.
to make way for what's new. And so, if you're listening or watching
Yeah.
this, just want you to say, don't spend all this time reading the old clippings about who you used to be,
Mhm.
because God says you are a new creation.
Yeah.
I've spent 62 long years being old Bob, but this morning, 5 or 6 hours ago, I woke up new Bob.
Oh
Who's
man.
he going to be? What's he going to do? And God loves justice. He just does. Here's the
Yeah.
tricky thing, though. It's easy to raise a fist to the injustices we see around us,
Yeah.
but Jesus kind of turned that on its ear, and he said, "I want you to love your enemies." And so
Hmm.
that's a pickle for a guy who tries death penalty cases against witch doctors
Hmm.
that sacrifice his kids. And it makes for a pretty weird business card of mine. But one of the things that I've been trying to do, that's what led us to taking these cases to trial against witch doctors who
Hmm.
are doing wrong, yet at the same time starting a school and teaching them how to read and write. And I just think there's something beautiful. There's a ropes course in northern Uganda that we took these witch doctors to, and I bet it must be 50 or 100 feet up there. And they were all strapped in with their climber, harnesses, their carabiners, and I got them all up to the top. And when they got to the top, I unclipped them. I gave them a little push. And they
Oh
said,
my.
"Stop pushing me." I said, "Stop scaring people, because this is how everybody feels around you." So I think we can
Yeah. Wow.
speak truth to power. The
Yes.
difference is this: I know what their names are. Nobody else knows what their names are. They just know they're witch doctors. But I've actually
Hmm.
taken the time to learn the names of these guys that are trying to sort out some important things. They're already the leaders in their community.
Mm.
We just need to give them a quarter of a twist, and they need to experience what it feels like to be frightened, and to say, like, this is what you do to people every day. Is there a way that we could work on that together? And it starts from caring enough to know somebody's name. And I think we got a lot of people trying to do justice that
Yeah.
don't know the names of the
Right.
people they're trying to either advocate for or advocate against.
Yeah.
And I think that's one thing that we can bring. If faith is a big deal for you and you're listening, do this, because this is what Jesus talks about. If faith isn't a big deal for you,
Yeah.
if you're none of the above, do the same thing. Just take a
Exactly.
genuine interest in people for no other reason. There's nothing on the other side of the equal sign, no agenda. Because when love has an agenda, it ain't love anymore. It's just
Yeah.
another program. And we don't need more programs. You've seen how screwed up our programs are in in the United States. Like, we
Sure.
do not need more screwed up programs. What we need is more people that will put down all the earlier versions of them, all identify their biases, get real with those things, and to say, I'm going to actually turn. I'm going to leave that in the past.
Right.
I'm going to start doing the right thing.
Well, Bob, one of the things, I think most profound things I've heard about what justice is it's taking somebody else's problem and making it your problem. And I love the simplicity of that, because, like you said, so often, there's obviously moments in time where things get to a point, and yes, anger and rage and frustration comes out, but like you said, there's always an opportunity for us to not just see one side of the coin, but to realize even the smallest little things, making just someone else's problem my problem, can actually, in a way, make a profound impact, in the sense that the way I see it is that there's so many great people out there doing incredible things, and so often we just hear one side of the tape and so one of my goals for this podcast is, as well, is to give voice to those injustices that we see around the world, to get aware and understand what they are, but also be aware of the incredible people that are out there doing something, inspired that you actually don't have to complicate this. All you have to do is make somebody else's problem your problem and do something about that. And you've been doing that. And I've been so inspired seeing you do that. And I'm so grateful to have you on. But in saying that, it has to be a lifestyle thing. It's not something love is something you actually do. Standing up for someone's problem is something you actually have to live out. It's not something you can just simply virtue signal about or write a post. It's something that it's got to be a part of your everyday life.
Yeah, I think it'd be the difference between somebody that has a hobby farm, like one duck, one cow, one goose, and maybe a green tractor, and a working ranch. And I think that Justice is a working ranch. It isn't a hobby farm. You don't just do a thing, but you just say, well, I'm just going to identify with there and develop an empathy for somebody. But then it can't stop there, because just thinking swell thoughts or saying, I hope that turns out okay for you. And I'm not saying that your issue needs to be my issue, but I would say find something you're passionate about, and to say, I could get some skin in the game. Like, and for each of us to say, what's your next courageous step? Like the next little step that you could make that would make all the difference for somebody. And God never compares what he creates. He just makes each of us different with different. Sweet Maria, you know her, that I've been married to for the 37 years I've been loving her, and the 33 she's been loving me back. Like I've learned that we're just so vastly different, and so too will be the way that all of us approach injustices, but approach them we must. We cannot just stand afar. I'm thinking about a story from the Bible where it said that the disciples were watching from afar. Right. I don't want to be that guy. I want to be the guy that launches in. And are we going to blow it? Of course we will, because we're us. I mean, we're not going to have these like incredible moments where there's these breakthroughs, but it's not about the breakthrough. It isn't about the Instagram post. It's about you're actually connecting what you believe with what you do.
Yeah, Bob, I remember when we first met was in Iraq. You had come over to visit what we were up to, some fun we were having over there, really addressing one of the craziest moments, at least in recent history, with the invasion of ISIS into Iraq. And we were just doing our best to help some refugees and families and kids that were not without a school, and we capered and did some fun stuff together. But I remember one of the things, Bob, that for all those incredible opportunities we got to partner, but one of the things I noticed about you which actually came up on a recent podcast you're hosting. You have a great podcast called Dream Big, and you have your great friends that come on. A guy named Brad came on, and Brad Montague, he talked about becoming better grown-ups, and he talked about how grown-ups can be big in the eyes of kids. They can be boring and they can be busy. And it made me ironically think of you, Bob. You're big, but one of the things I noticed is you made yourself small. We would load up into these SUV trucks. We'd have to pull open that really heavy gate just to get out. And one of the things I noticed, if you weren't at the first person out there opening the gate for everyone else, you were in the third row back of an SUV, the tallest guy amongst us. There you were, scrunched up in the back, and it comes second nature to you. But for me, it spoke a lot. Here I am thinking, how important it is to just honor you, Bob, and to make sure but you wouldn't have a bar of it. You made sure you made yourself small, even though, in the eyes of so many people, not only are you this towering figure, but you're important, Bob, but you didn't. And it really spoke to me, and it really showed me how even little things like that, the way we live out our lives, makes an incredible. The fact that you're not too busy to jump on this podcast that is not even live yet. It's launching. You're going to be helping me launch this thing. You're not too busy for that. You're available. How many calls do you take a day?
Oh, it's so neat. I still get about 100 a day from the back of these
ridiculous
books. It's awesome. Yeah. So, but that we can't decide what country we'll be born in. We don't get to pick our parents,
Right.
but we can decide how available we'll be.
Mm.
And that doesn't mean that everybody needs to be equally available. Again, like keep your eye on your own paper. Just say, what is it that God has for me? And for me, I can answer the phone and say hello and be available for a moment or two. And that's just great. So you do what you can. And so if you have a chance to go in the back of the truck, I probably had a dozen candy bars back there. That was probably the subplot of what was drawing me back there. If I had chocolate all over me, but to take the chance to actually live into the symbol beautiful reverse economy that Jesus was always talking about. And I just mentioned Jesus, but if Jesus isn't your thing, just insert love here. Right. But just say but he always said, you want to be first, be last. You want to be the leader, follow. And so we go to a place like Iraq, as the guests that are just observing the courageous people. And so to see you and your wife and the kids and the courageous work that you're doing there, we just walked away completely inspired. But if you need to actually make the phone call, you actually have to do this. Well, I had read about what was going on in Afghanistan with the little girls and the Taliban now has taken over, I think, 85% of the country. But I didn't know anybody from Afghanistan. So I got on WhatsApp. And do you have that app on your phone?
Yeah.
I got on WhatsApp and I met this guy. He said he was from Afghanistan. I'm like, awesome. I'm looking for somebody from Afghanistan. And so we're corresponding back and forth. We're sending messages, but I don't know what team he's playing for. And so I'm no damn dummy. So I actually go back to Washington, D.C. and ask the people who know. It's like, do you know who this guy is? And here's the message I get. They said, he's a good guy. I'm like, awesome. So I asked if he'll meet, and he says yes. So I flew to Kabul, Afghanistan to meet this guy. And I'm telling you, it was a little nerve-wracking getting off the plane because it's just a really violent country right now as they're in transition. And we got a text message and he said, Bob, I can't meet you at the airport. I'm like, no.
Oh, no.
He said, what you need to do is leave the airport grounds and start walking through Kabul. I'm like, are you kidding me? Actually, I don't think I said kidding. He said, after a while, he said, you're going to come to a car. The last number of the license plate's a 7. Get in the car. Now, we all have the decision to make. Are you going to get the next flight out? Or are you going to start walking?
Sure.
So I just started walking. I'm thinking, what could possibly go wrong? And I found the car. I got in. What it turns out, this guy is right at the top of Afghanistan's leadership. What he wanted to know is if I would trust him enough to do what he told me to do, then he'd trust me enough to build the school. And so I think it's not that we're constantly being tested, but we're constantly being given opportunities to decide, I'm going to get back in the plane, I'm going to stay in the safety of where I am, or I'm going to take a walk. Oh, what do you guys call it? A walkabout?
A walkabout. Go walkabout. Yeah, let's go walkabout.
I'm just going to do it. And the beautiful thing about life is it's so completely uncertain. And man, if you're looking for certainty, you're going to find it, but after you live your life.
Right.
But this time right now is just mostly we're off the map, and that's where justice will take you. It is not going to take you to where the map leads you. It'll take you to where God leads you. It'll take you to where love leads you. And sometimes those are uncertain places, but that's where all the good stuff happens anyway.
Well, it's where your core convictions, your deep down core convictions will take you. You know, one of the core convictions for you is availability. One of the core convictions, obviously love and action. For me, Bob, it's this idea of belonging, of making sure everyone feels welcome when they come into my house, when they come into my stratosphere. I want them to feel included, loved, on the in. Probably because, you know, I don't know if you know about me, but I was born in Indonesia. My parents were actually missionaries in the jungle highlands of Irian Jaya, which is West Papua. And so for the first few years of my life, I was literally the only little white baby. They actually put little brown onesies on me to be held up. And I look back at all these photos. I don't remember so much of it myself, except for a few friends that I had. In fact, one little kid, Musa, his name was. I was like the village free-range chicken that would just wander around, go crazy. And it was this, I feel like in this sense, I've always been not lost, but always getting lost. The amount of times I got lost as a kid, my mum tells me I jumped over our 5-foot-high fence at 3.5 years old with my little plastic tricycle. I jumped over the fence. I walked 1 kilometer to the local shopping center before they found out where I was. I went to the butcher shop, where every time I went to the butcher shop, they'd give us it's this thing called Fritz. It's like luncheon. What do you call it there? Bologna, I think they call it.
Yeah, okay.
And so I went to go get myself some bologna at 3.5 years old. I literally, on this main road, or on the back of a main road, I just walked with my little truck. I was surprised nobody pulled over to find out what is this little kid doing.
That's awesome.
But I was always trying to get lost, searching for, I wasn't trying to get lost. I was just always on this mission. But for me, I realized, I've done four international moves with my family now in a little under 5 years. We've traveled a lot.
It's like you're in the part of the witness protection program. You just keep changing countries, change your name. My name is Sally.
Yeah, it's kind of like that. But this sense of, we're all searching for home. We're all searching for a place where we feel we belong. And, that has obviously driven me in where I'm going. Can you talk a bit about why it's so important to kind of live in your convictions and let those be the guiding things that kind of push you forward? You talk a bit about it in your book, and that was one of the parts that really stuck out to me as I was reading it.
Yeah, I think we need to each decide like what we want. And so just as you're listening to think like, what do you want? And so you might say, I want to be happy, and mazel tov, like me too. But to just say like, let's just drill down on that. Say, what would make you happy? Like, would $1 million do it? $2 million? Sure. How about giving away 4? Do you want a convertible Porsche? The problem with a convertible Porsche, it's going to end up in the shop and you're going to be in debt.
Right.
So what you'd say, what's something that'll actually I could make me feel happiness. And I think what we're going to do is you blow the foam off the top, you're going to find that it involves people. At some point, you're going to leave all the toys behind and all the cash, and you're going to arrive at people that we long for love and purpose and connection and a couple authentic relationships. So what do you want? And then figure out, like, why do you want it? So some people want to be popular. I'm just saying to get real about what you want. Say, like, I want to be popular. And that's awesome, except you have to ask the question, how popular and to whom? So, and the thing about like you want applause, join the circus. But what if you decide what I want to do is be purposeful, like that would trump popularity. Actually, forgive me for saying the word Trump, like that it would actually mean more than popularity. Yeah. And so what I want to do is to say, what do I want? Why do I want it? And then importantly, to your point, say, what am I going to do about it?
Yeah.
And so for each of these, so that it isn't just brain candy, you're just like, everybody's got an opinion. I want to be an example. We need more people that are doing what you're doing. You found the refugee community in Australia. You did this, and you weren't doing it because you wanted a bunch of applause. No. You didn't do it because you want the cash because you don't get it. You did it because you thought this would be really meaningful, that at the end of the day, to an audience of one, that I'll look back over my life and I'll say that I invested it in others, that you didn't lose who you were in this, but you lost some of the things that didn't matter. And get the convertible. If that's going to blow your hair, go for it. So that it's not throwing that stuff under the bus. It's just saying what would matter more than that. And that we get to create these really safe places for people to have conversations. Your podcast will be one of them, where people can just come and just know that it's a really safe place to exchange ideas and mostly outward looking. And there will be nothing less satisfying than making everything about me or you. And so to just say, I want to take an interest in the people that are around me. And that's probably why Jesus, when he met a lawyer like me, he said, I got two things for you to do. Love God with your heart, soul, and mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. And some of our neighbors are really hurting. They are people of color. They are people that have taken a financial hit. They're people that have been ostracized by society. They're people that love somebody that somebody says they can't love. They're people that are just hurting. And she said, like, would you chill out?
100%.
Like, we're not umpires calling balls and strikes. We're base coaches. We say, like, how can I help you on your way? That's what they did in the Benedictine tradition. The Benedictine order would have somebody called a porter. They would go to the gate every day, and their job was to say, how can I help you on your way? So I want to be a porter. I know you do too. I've seen you in action.
Can I translate that for my Australian audience? So you called them base coaches, and it's in baseball. And it'd be like we have what these called runners in an Australian rules football game, which actually I remember I came and visited you after I played in San Diego with a bunch of...
you were sore.
Remember, I think I raided your painkiller medicine box because I was busted up sore. I hadn't played in a long time. And a few people got carted off in ambulance, and I was lucky I wasn't one of them. But so what we have on the field is we have these runners. They have water bottles in their hand. They run out, and when they're actually allowed on the field of play while the game is being played. You're seeing these guys with bright yellow vests with water in their hand, literally giving water to players as they're going, because it's kind of like hockey, except you really can't sub off that much. You're constantly going. And so those people, and obviously they're not just giving water. They're giving little tips and advice from the coach, hey, tell this player, move forward,
nice.
Do this,
I didn't know
start
that.
doing this. How cool is that, right? Because in American football, you've got all these fancy helmets, right, with things in your ear telling you what to do. So we kind of just have to go old school and just send blokes and girls out there with their bright colored vests.
Be the runner.
Be the runner.
I think that's it. And the runner isn't telling everybody like their opinion about everything.
Right.
The runner is just meeting needs. The need in front of them, identify the need, meet the need. And if that's not your need, that's fine, but go meet some other need. But don't spend all of your time meeting your own perceived needs. Because if you get so busy trying to be comfortable, I know some my friends, they will have a church service or a gathering, and they'll end with a big prayer, and they'll say, I pray that, everyone would go home safely, and that they would, and these are beautiful thoughts, but I want people to live dangerous lives. I want people to, including me, to be less comfortable. I want people to see what's really going on around them, and then have the guts and the grit to do something about it. And I'm telling you, Tim, I'm not always there. Right. Sometimes I'm just worn out. I'm just emotionally I got nothing left. So with all the things that everyone is confronted, from protests to viruses to whatever, there's a lot of people that just feel whiplash. They're just, they got nothing. And I just want you to know that that's okay. Get real with that. Sit down, get some rest, but don't let that become your position, that love is never stationary. And so you might catch a rest, get some rest, then get back out into the game. Because I don't know how many quarters or how you time your games, but it goes for a period of time. So it's like you got the period of time. The crazy thing about Goffs, all the Goff men seem, from generation to generation, all seem to like pass away at about the same year. Isn't that crazy? We only get many twists. I know this is kind of creepy, but I've got a clock that counts backwards from there.
Oh God, please. I'm not surprised, Bob. I'm not surprised.
So what it makes me mindful is you got a little bit of time, and what are you going to do with this? One of the things that I've really respected with you, Tim, is how you've run home to your family, that you've managed to navigate the demands of justice, but without forgetting the people that God's put, under your roof. And that can be a difficult thing. Do they have a Forrest Gump, that movie down in Australia?
Yeah. We can get it.
I love that. He goes and
good.
runs across the
Totally.
America back and forth a couple times. There's this iconic scene where Forrest Gump's running through the desert. He's been running for 3 years, 2 months, 14 days, and 16 hours. Don't ask me how I can remember that. I'm a lawyer. So after 3 years, 2 months, 14 days, and 16 hours, he stops, and everybody thinks he's going to say something awesome. And he says, I'm going to go home now. That's it.
Totally.
And there's something beautiful. I'm telling you, if you were listening, run home.
Yeah.
Do justice there. Get your house in order. Don't keep it there. Don't wait to have this thing perfect, because you're never going to get out the door. But I would say run home there and start figuring that stuff out before you start figuring out stuff across an ocean.
You've made me think. I was going to ask you about how to overcome setbacks, but you're probably better off just picking up a copy of your book or going to one of your workshops when you've got them online, I think, as well now. But you made me think of, this idea. It's a question I have. I'm almost 40, and I've got 4 young children from 9 years old to 2 years old, and I'm learning to realize, and I have an incredible, incredible wife who is the hero in our family. You've met her.
Come on.
She holds me up and is certainly the rock, as I know you would say the same with sweet Maria, your wife, but as I look at them, what would you say to someone who's my age, right? Bob, I've got this question for you. What do you say to me that's trying to balance? Like, I've got dreams, I've got ambitions of what I want to be. Yeah. But I also want to lean in at night when I tuck my kids in to sleep, and I want to say, what's your dream, and how can I be a part, of making your dream and prioritizing your dream and prioritizing what's important to you. I took a leaf out of your book when you talk about giving your wife the resignation letter for your job, and she wouldn't. I wouldn't say she pulled that out and used it, but I could read in my mind, hey, this ain't working for us. Yeah. And I'm going to make sure I make a drastic decision, and it really was a very difficult decision to actually move back to Australia here, having just moved back to America. That's how crazy my life has been. But what would you say to someone? What would you say to me, Bob? What would you say to all those people that are listening out there that are juggling so many things, young kids, young families, have these great ambitions, and want to make sure they're not leaving their family and their wife behind in the process?
Oh, man. Well, first of all, I can just empathize with you. If you're listening, where you just feel this tug, the like tension, you feel like you're sometimes like a marionette and everybody has a string except you. And so one of the things I'll answer is with something that just happened a couple days ago. We have this camp that you know about, and what I'm trying to do is plant a vineyard. And I don't know, I don't like wine, but I decided I was going to plant a vineyard. The first thing I needed to do is clear the brush. So I got in this big machine that clears the brush, and we go back and forth clearing the brush. Do you know what is under the brush? The rattlesnakes.
Oh, no.
And I found a couple. And that's what's going to happen. If you want to get clarity on your family and your purpose and all that, you got to clear the brush. You got to see what you got. And when you do that, you're going to actually find some things in there that might startle you. You're just going to have to say, like, what am I going to do that? You can ignore the rattlesnakes, but they're not going to ignore you.
They're not going to go
so
away.
Do that deep dive. I've gone to a place called Onsite before, and I've done a deep dive and to say, let's just talk about the rattlesnakes, because by not talking them, they did make them more. So I would say, as you're finding your way back home, to clear the brush, deal with the rattlesnakes that have been hidden. I was driving after clearing this patch of brush. I drove the excavator underneath an oak tree. The arm of the excavator hit a limb, and a beehive with 10,000 bees landed right on the top of the excavator. I was a busy guy there for a second.
Oh, dear.
And what I had is a door, and I shut the door. And so the bees are freaking out. They are losing their minds on the outside. Their one objective, sting me.
Right.
But because I shut the door to some of that stuff, I say I could leave that on the outside and have a quiet place inside. And so you can fill in here whatever the bees in your life are.
Right.
It can be in-laws, it can be your boss, it can be whatever all the distractions are. You got to shut the door. You got to find a quiet place to reflect and to say, who am I and what's my role in all of this? And then at some point, you got to do what I'm going to do next, which is plant the vineyards. Here's the crazy thing about a vineyard I'm learning, that a vineyard takes about 8 to 15 years before the grapes get good. And you know what? I don't have that many wines. So I am clearing the brush. I'm dealing with rattlesnakes. I'm closing the door on the bees. I am planting the vines, and I'm not even going to eat the grapes. That's what justice is.
A legacy.
Yeah. So you just say, this is not for me. I'm doing it because I'm here. I'm going to be a participant. I'm going to deal with my own ish first. And then I'm going to go get about the important work of growing people.
Yeah.
And you may not realize the impact that you have. We don't need to lick a bunch of return address stamps on it and say, this came from Tim or this came from Bob, or put your name on a stupid building that's going to burn down anyway. But what I want us to do is to do the work that's going to get, and it starts with us, but it does not end with us.
Well, and like, as you've shown, you got to take your family on that journey with you. I mean, the beautiful thing I've realized is I don't want my dream and my passion to take me away. I've always wanted my family to be right there in the thick of it, experiencing it. And you've done some fun capers with your kids. In fact, you've given them permission to call the shots and take you where they want you to go, whether it's eat an ice cream with presidents on the other side of the world or whatever the case might be. Like you said, you're leaving a legacy. You've got Richard, Lindsay, and Adam that are going to be carrying on and the incredible legacy that you're leaving. And I think that's one thing I've really valued and seen in you as I've heard and got to know.
There's a great verse that underlies a lot of this. It's kind of like eavesdropping on Jesus talking to his dad. And he said, I brought glory and honor to you here on earth by finishing the work you gave me to do. So if you're listening in, I would just say 3 words: finish your work. Like whatever your work is. I don't decide what your work is. You decide.
Yeah.
I would think about that. Well, they say this in carpentry: measure it twice, cut it once. So I would be really careful about what you decide to throw a lot of time and energy into. But once you've decided, finish your work. Don't do this. You're going to push against injustice, and you know what injustice is going to do? It's going to push right back. You're going to have some setbacks. Yeah. You're going to be horribly misunderstood. It's going to be, people will misunderstood your message. They'll misunderstand your methods. They'll misunderstand your motives. They come up with something else that's an M. They'll misunderstand that too. But do the work. And I think there's something beautiful about that. If we're not looking for applause from strangers, what we're doing is looking for people in need. And so I'm not going to measure my efficacy by whether somebody thinks that's swell or the validation I get from others. I'm going to do it because it's my work and I'm going to do it. And it can be kind of lonesome, but it's kind of like the difference you have. Like, it wasn't Andre Agassi down in your place. Yeah. He was really good at singles.
Tennis,
he wasn't good at,
yeah.
It was good at singles, not doubles.
Right.
He's probably like 70 now. I'm dating myself, but
no, I remember
but
Andre.
that idea, we're playing singles, not doubles most of the time. It comes to justice work. It's me and injustice. And we're just going to hit that ball and then hit it again and hit it again and hit it again. But if you think the work is going to be complete, I mean, even Jesus said you're just going to always have the poor, but that doesn't mean you throw up your hands and say like, well, then whatever. It's
that's right.
Identify with that.
And looking back, I could point out a gazillion ways I really screwed up trying to help somebody, and I really made a mess of things. But that does not mean don't keep trying, don't keep swinging at the bat, don't keep learning and moving forward. And is there anything that sticks out in terms of if someone feels like they've just really made a massive mistake? I know I've been there, I've done that, and I've probably called you in that moment and said, "Hey, help me. How do I get out of this?" Is there something that comes to mind if there's someone out there that's thinking, "Look, you don't know, Bob. I'm really up to my eyeballs. I really don't know the way forward."
Yeah, I would say that is a time where you might be in touch with your greatest need, and your desperate need for the only kind of love that God could give.
Yeah.
I'm not an infomercial for Jesus. I got no skin in your game on that.
Yeah.
But I just think, man, you might see in your desperation actually a tremendous need that you have to be like met and filled so that you'll have something. I teach at Pepperdine Law School, which is like one of our good law schools here, which is kind of nuts because I'm just such a goofy guy. But they've let me do it for a decade or two. I also teach at San Quentin Prison. And San Quentin is one of our more notorious prisons from decades and decades ago. And I have these amazing students that are in the class. But here's the deal. We flipped it and we said, you be the teacher, I'll be the student. And we went around in this moment. We were in a small circle with some of these guys, maybe 10 of them. And we were talking about the average unserved term on their things, 107 years each.
Average.
So yeah, that's the average, including me. So I'm like, oh, dang. So they've had some setbacks, and certainly the people that were victims of some of their wrongdoing had setbacks as well. But we were talking about, we'd gone through the prison yard, and there's guys like bench pressing, like grand pianos, but they're just like huge muscles and all that. I was laughing. I was saying, man, if I had one of those bars on my chest, I wouldn't be able to move it. I'd be just saying, and I said, what's something you'd want to get off your chest so that you can actually move forward for what's next? And each guy went around and said what they'd want to get off their chest. And the guy sitting next to me was in here for a couple life terms. And he said, I've been in here for the last 20 years, and I've been telling everybody that I got framed and I didn't do it. And he took a deep breath and he said, I did it.
Oh, wow.
And I'm telling you, there's something in that moment. He was the freest guy I've ever met. And so I would say, if you're suffering the setback, if you're in the middle and you say, how could I ever be used? There's all this shame and guilt surrounding this. You feel totally stuck. Just get real with it. Find one safe person. You can call me. You can call Tim. Like, find somebody in your community that's super safe to be with. Get it off your chest. And then now you've cleared the path to actually move forward with the important work. Say, okay, that's who we used to be. Now, who are we becoming? And I'm telling you, heaven is leaning over the rails. You just can't wait to see who you'll turn into. Same for me. Same for you, Tim. You're beautiful. And I think if we could live with that kind of expectation for one another, that would be beautiful. Instead of thinking of like the news clip of who they used to be. Yeah. And I'm telling you, there's some difficult people. We've got one running the place over here. You guys have been listening to this hairdo for 4 years. And I'm not a political guy, but I'm just like, holy moly, it's so embarrassing.
Right.
We will hopefully right the ship soon. But one of the things that will happen is you'll just be misunderstood because you'll be identified with somebody else and they'll think, well, if you're with him, then I must be against you. And I guess I just want to check that at the door. Yeah. Like, what if we just say people are people, people aren't projects. God makes a people, people make issues. People aren't issues. People are people.
Wow.
And I just need to remind myself whether there's something that you see on television you object to the most, to say God is up to something different in their life. Heaven knows what that is than he's up to in my life. Take a wedding this coming week in Australia. You got a farmer that was in the drought praying for rain.
Yeah.
And you've got a wedding planner praying for sunshine.
Yeah.
And if it rains, it doesn't mean that God doesn't like the bride. No. It just means he sees the plight of the farmer. And so just seeing that God is doing something different in the bride's life than he's doing in the farmer's life. And so I just want to know the people that I don't understand. I don't want to vilify, but I will call wrong stuff. and to say like, oh, heck no, try
No
not to
way.
cuss.
Yeah.
We're so not doing that. But raise your fist with resolve, not
Yeah.
just militants, but with
Yes.
resolve to
To
say,
do something.
oh,
Yeah.
heck no,
Yeah.
I'm going to get in
Yeah.
and I'm not waiting for permission anymore.
I'm not.
I'm here. That's all the permission I need.
Wow. Well, Bob, as we wind things up, I just remember like it wasn't only a couple months ago I come back from the States. We just moved just before the lockdown happened, a month or so before everything locked down. We moved back to Australia with my family, and I was going through a really, really low time, and I was starting to get really, really depressed. I'd left a job. Actually, I really enjoyed so many aspects of it. I was traveling around the world. I was over Middle East and North Africa. I got to constantly be on planes and meeting with incredible people and helping encourage great things around the world. Of course, a lot of that's now. I wouldn't be doing that anyway. But yeah, but I remember just coming back, starting to feel really sorry for, and honestly just getting into a really low funk. And I remember one morning I just went, as I would often do, I'd either go for a surf or just go for a walk down the beach if I could. And I remember just starting to walk out, peering out into the ocean, just sitting there. And for the first time, this thought dropped in my mind. I don't know where it came from. But as I just started to walk out into the ocean and look into the uncertainty of what felt like my life, I have no idea what really is going next. And a lot of it's, just perspective. There were some incredible things. I have a wonderful family. I'm so fortunate and blessed. I mean, I'm living the dream in many ways, but I was kind of stuck. And I just remember this thought that came to mind. It says, you are right where I want you to be. You are right where I want you to be. And that freedom to acknowledge, hang on, this is where I'm at. And I may not know tomorrow, but right here, right now, living in that present, I've got the opportunity now to get started and use what I have. And I think a lot of people, me included, we get stuck thinking about, we've got our big ambitions, but we don't realize that it starts here with what we've got in our hand. We can get this thing going, and this is right where you're supposed to be.
I agree, and it's nice. Sometimes you can start thinking in binary terms, like zeros and ones, like it's all this or it's all of that.
Yeah.
But we could have our eyes on the horizon as we're moving there, and know where our feet are. Just be where your feet are. Just look down. If you're listening, find your feet. That's where you are. Eyes on the horizon, know where your feet are. And then what we're talking about is all the injustices between where your feet are and the horizon.
Mm-hmm.
And then just find your way. I've sailed to Hawaii a couple times, haven't quite made it to Australia. But what we would do, it's 2,750 miles each way.
Well, there's no planes, but you could sail to Australia. I don't think there's anyone stopping you.
Take a hot minute. But what we would do is we would fix these waypoints. We would plug them in, and we would steer for the next waypoint. It's like an imaginary X floating in the water. And so we would just chunk it up. You can sail about 300 miles a day if you're clipping right along. And so we would just chunk it up 300 miles a day and plug in these waypoints. What if you do the same thing with your ambitions to just say, this is the next waypoint. This is about a day's work from now. I'm not going to make a list. I'm going to make a call. I'm not going to think about it. I'm going to take action on it. And when you start doing that, get to the next X and say, where do you go? The next X. A series of waypoints. 2,750 miles sounds like a long way, and it is. Yeah. But 300 miles sounds doable, and it is.
Well, look, we could talk for hours, Bob. I'm just so thankful that I get the chance just to catch up with you again. I'd love to hear. Good. I know you've got some stuff. You were just out at camp. Could you tell folk what's on the horizon? What are you dreaming up next? What's happening in the world of Bob Goff?
Oh boy, like so many mischievous things. It's just the right kind of mischief. So this camp has taken a great deal of time. We're just having horses brought in. We're going to be doing equine therapy with people that have been through some very difficult things. So we have 7 horses arriving. Here's the crazy part. I've never been on a horse before. I don't even know what to put the straw in.
That just doesn't make sense. But yeah, you cease to surprise.
Yeah. So I'm just thinking about things that would be meaningful for the family, meaningful for me with the number of wines that I have left, and just being really strategic about it. I've got my head down, writing the next book, the way to get out of being concerned about how people think about your current book is to get your head in the next one.
I love
And
that.
so I would say the same thing would be applicable to our circumstances. Get in your head in the next thing. And out of this, they've worried about what everybody else is thinking, man, like fill that void. If you are susceptible to that, fill it, do meaningful work, and start by doing work on yourself. Take a deep dive and say, who am I? What do I want? Why do I want it? Decide what you're going to do about it.
Yeah. Well, I can't wait to get out to that camp of yours out in San Diego. I almost was able to sneak in a sneaky visit before we flew back to Australia. Wish somehow that could have worked out. But I've got my ticket booked. The minute they let us fly out of Australia, I'll be on the way out and
come and see my vineyard.
I cannot wait. I'm so thankful. I'm gonna ask you a couple of quick fire questions that shouldn't take very long at all. But this is going to be special bonus content for those of you that subscribe, become a patron of the podcast. And so if you want to learn some of these quick fire questions that I'm going to run by, which I'm going to run by all my guests actually, to get a little extra info out on who you are and some of the curious things you're up to. We're going to do that. But Bob, before we go to that, thank you so much. So much.
Oh, thanks a million.
For
so good being with you.
Spending some time with me this morning. And wow, it's been
okay.
Loads
And
of
if
fun.
you guys have been listening, now it's time to start doing.
Totally. And this podcast is proof positive. 2 years ago, I was like, I'm going to do this, but I finally got round to quit making excuses, and I'm like, I'm going to do this. I don't care if we have to jerry rig this setup. I've got some great mates around me helping me to do this, and I'm just so pumped to have you on and for you to be helping to launch my paper airplane out there. So thanks, Bob. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Justice Matters. If you had as much fun listening to my conversation with Bob Goff as I did, and you want to hear the rest of our chat, then head over to justicematters.tv. There you can get a link to the Patreon page, where for as little as $5 a month, you can get access to all kinds of bonus content, conversations, questions that I ask my guests that aren't available to the public. And at this point, I'd like to thank a special couple patrons. These are the first two overseas patrons. I've got Marco Reichlich from Switzerland and Phil Hildgaard from Denmark. Thanks, guys, for supporting the show. Special thanks also goes to Jose Biotto, the audio-visual engineer. I'd like to also thank Music Duo, David Gungor, and John Arndt, also known as The Brilliance, for providing the music for this podcast. And if you're enjoying yourself, why don't you consider sending me a review or rating the podcast on Apple, Spotify, or Google, wherever you listen in. And if you're watching online on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. You can also hit the bell, get notifications so that whenever the next episode is uploaded, you will find out. Join me again soon for another episode, and I am your host, Tim Buxton. Thanks for listening.